Welcome to part one of Getting Wealthy and Staying Wealthy. This week we're going to explore the amazing power of time in achieving both. So hopefully as you watch these commentaries where we've been highlighting some of the key aspects of Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money, you're like, man, that sounds a little familiar. Some of these we've certainly brought to you over time. I'm not going to take credit or try to compare myself to a book I greatly admire so much. But again, it's not about my voice, somebody else's voice. It's about getting you the information so that it can come in. And we know that at times a new voice, a new way of explaining things is so important. So this week we're going to touch on getting wealthy. Some of the aspects of staying wealthy will be expanded upon in greater detail next week. But the biggest thing is, again, the power of compounding, the power of time. In a chapter called The Confounding Compounding of his book, Morgan Housel goes on to explain an amazing story of both of Warren Buffett and as well juxtapose it against one of the most successful hedge fund stories of all time. Most of this comes back to something you've heard us talk about time and time again, which is it isn't timing the market, but it's time in the market. So again, a summation of this story, which you can find on page 50 of his book, is Warren Buffett. We all know him as a wildly successful investor. Certainly, he has a lot of talent, but he's also put in a lot of time. So Morgan Housel goes back, looks at Warren Buffett, who by the age of 30 had $1 million saved up, about 9.6 million in today's dollars. He had begun his investing life genuinely at 10. Thus, this amazing amount of money by the time he's 30. Over his career, he's averaged 22% returns to find himself today with a value of a net worth of approximately $85 billion. What Housel touches on is, amazing returns. Certainly, talent is a key thing, but it is really time that drives so much of those returns. He points out that if Warren Buffett had been like most of us, taken his teenage years and 20s to find oneself, develop career skills as opposed to get going, and had approximately 25,000 instead of $1 million by the time he was 30, and then went on to experience those amazing returns that again any of us would be excited to achieve, and then retired to go golf and play with the grandkids at age 60, he would have a net worth of $12 million. Still a lot of money by most people's respects, but 99.9% less than he has. And it is that those years, again, from 10 to 30, and then from 60 into his 80s that really have made him who he is. He compares him to Jim Simmons of Renaissance Technologies, arguably the most successful hedge fund with 66% annualized rate of return since 1988. But without that length of time, again, about 35 years, approximately half of what Buffett's been at, he's got a net worth, still in the billions, mind you, but 75% less than Warren Buffett, despite getting 3 times the return. So again, that power of time in the market. Another great graphic that we've shown to you, I'm certain before, just from a pure equity standpoint, what is that role of time historically on one's probabilities of success? As you can see, as we start at that 1 year mark, wild dispersion of returns from negative 30 something all the way up to positive 47. But as you go to a 5-year rolling number, a 10-year rolling number, a 20-year rolling number, you'll of course see pretty dramatic differences in the dispersion of returns get a lot narrower. And then of course, your odds of being negative shrink dramatically over time. That time in the market, however you want to put it, that time to compound, so key. So then how do we buy ourselves this time? Should be the question on any of our mind. One, obviously, is getting started in saving, but there's a lot of other things that can trip us up. Coming back to, because it is the framework, we always come back to our LIVE framework, liquidity, income, volatility, and expected returns. You can jumble these letters depending on the circumstance and put them on this teeter-totter that I've designed from what you're hoping to achieve, how you're going to achieve it. But this week we're focused on the how. How do we buy ourselves this time? This is a topic of conversation I've been having with a lot of clients, including a lot of high net worth clients of late. And the first way to buy that time is to make sure you have sufficient liquidity and you have sufficient cash flow. One of the biggest mistakes we see made time and time again is people ascertain their position of strength during good markets. During good economies, during good markets, probably not the time you're running into a cash crunch. Probably not the time you're running the risk of potentially getting laid off from your job. Bad things tend to come in bulks. Obviously, when it comes to the economy and market, there's some pretty strong correlations as to why those things might all be happening at one point. But the point is really being honest with yourself about where am I? And in that worst case scenario, what am I really gonna need? Where could it come from? And ultimately, how much liquidity and income am I going to need from my portfolio to be able to maintain my family's life moving forward until we can again get to better times. This point is certainly going to differ based on one's age, totality of one's resources, where they may be, the size of their lifestyle is certainly going to play a big role. It's one of the big reasons while when we're planning, we're helping clients walk through what do you really need, what do you want, and what do you wish for? Because those are going to, again, play different roles in terms of how we're going to build a portfolio or where we want the client's mindset to be at a time. Once you've got this down, now you can start to maybe give up some of that liquidity, accept a little bit more volatility to, again, get those long-term expected returns that we want to see for our clients, that investors want to see for themselves. But again, as was shown earlier, buying ourselves that time to help build that wealth, regardless of whatever type of return set we might be given by the markets at a particular moment in time. We'll go into a little bit more of the planning side of this in next week's commentary, but I'll wrap it up with this great quote, again, that he used to summarize his chapter on compounding returns. Good investing isn't necessarily about earning the highest returns, because the highest returns tend to be one-off hits that can't be repeated. It's about earning pretty good returns that you can stick with and which can be repeated over the longest period of time. That's when compounding runs wild. We certainly want to see you all be wildly successful. That starts with a great plan, a great foundation, which we're happy to discuss with you anytime. See you soon.